Hi there, my name is Peter Dykes and I'm the Associate Principal Oboe of the Royal Scottish National Orchestra. It's a fantastic privilege to be talking today to our composer, Anna Thorvaldsdottir, who has written one of the pieces you're going to hear tonight, Metacosmos. I'm going to read a short extract from the program notes for Metacosmos, if that's okay. So, Metacosmos is constructed around the natural balance between beauty and chaos, how elements can come together in seemingly utter chaos to create a unified, structured whole. The idea and inspiration behind the piece, which is connected as much to the human experience as to the universe, is the speculative metaphor of falling into a black hole, the unknown, with endless constellations and layers of opposing forces connecting and communicating with each other, expanding and contracting, projecting a struggle for power as the different sources pull on you and you realize that you are being drawn into a force that is beyond your control. You wrote the piece in 2018, and just hearing that description read back to you, what are your thoughts about the piece now?
It's really about what you just read, this kind of metaphor of these struggles between these forces. That's very provided that much of an inspiration for me when I was working on the piece. And actually, with balance within music, it's very easy to kind of dwell in these metaphors as you're writing a piece, to have these struggles and release the balance between something that you might perceive as beautiful and other things that are more otherworldly effects, sounding textures and things like this.
When you're writing a piece like this, is this constantly in your mind then, that there's the balance and the contrast between those two things?
In a way, yes, but also always when I'm writing, I have spent a lot of time in the idea phase where I dream about the music, so that when I start to write it down, I really do know where I'm going in the music. The structure of the piece also was alive in the process, in the way that, for example, the very end of the piece didn't come to me until quite late in the process, whereas often in my music, I really do know the end very well, very early on. So it was a kind of these balancing forces were always kind of with me in the composition process as well. And then it just takes a long time to work through that, and things get edited out and then maybe put back in, and so it, in a way, the process of writing music is in a way somewhat like the inspiration behind this piece.
I've listened to the piece a number of times now. There's a performance by the Iceland Symphony Orchestra that I watched, and I have to say it had a real visceral impact on me. I found a sort of sense of tension in my body as the piece developed, and I guess it's these contrasting forces. And towards the end of the piece, with there's a loud gong splash and a kind of a sense of resolution. And then the piece drifts up into the ether. Have many people commented to you, having watched the piece, a similar kind of thing? This holding of tension throughout it.
It's a really great thing, and I really appreciate and love so much when people kind of reflect their individual takes on the music. But yes, I've had some people talk about this thing that you are describing. The way that you feel these tensions and resolving of the material, kind of these shifts in and out of focus, how you can take a material and kind of in a way turn it on its head. You have the same material but use it in different ways, and all these things create balances and different energies, and that's something I really like working with in music. I'm quite obsessed with structure and the way that I structure the material, how it flows, how the material breathe in and out of each other. It's something I spend a lot of time on, to kind of know how the piece feels in real time. That's very important to me, and how it kind of comes together in the end, because in the end you have this piece that stands for a certain duration, but in the process you are working sometimes on the same few measures for such a long time that you can you get different perspectives. So that's why I always regularly in the process of writing go in and spend inwardly listen to the piece in real time in my head, so to say.
It's interesting. I think as orchestral musicians, it would be quite a very healthy thing. I think if we all sort of like took a step out from our chairs in the orchestra and really viewed the work as a whole, because we often tend to become quite myopic about just the notes in front of us. The piece has it now. Let's say it has a life. It's had a number of performances. Out of interest, are there any changes you would make to it now?
No, actually there aren't. And the thing is that when I write music, I spend so much time on it, and I really don't let the piece out away from myself until I'm really certain that it's ready. And that's why I never revisit my pieces, because I really do spend so much time, and I am so certain when I hand them away that they are ready.
Fantastic. The orchestration strikes me as really interesting. People will see that there's a few things slightly different from what we might say is a normal orchestra setup. There's two tubas. There's three gong players around the back. There's multiple bass drums playing. It's a lot of alto flutes. There's a lot of sort of extra instruments that I would imagine to flesh out the lower end of the sound. Is this a specific thing to stretch the palette that you have available to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And in this piece and in some of my other pieces as well, I'm working with a big spectrum, and I needed a lot of kind of bass and a lot of darker colors, which I really enjoy working with and kind of weaving together with the higher register. So yeah, I mean, it really just taps into my my kind of interest and the way that I listen, kind of inwardly, how I hear music.
I have to say that I find the textures and as you said, the depth in the sound and the way that what do we say in the program notes? The metaphor of falling into a black hole. It really strikes me as there's there's an elemental feel about the piece to me watching it. So if there's anything specifically Icelandic about that, that's fantastic. If you don't mind asking you a few questions about the general life of a composer, quite often at these sort of pre-concert talk events, people are interested in the most interesting things, like the nuts and bolts about how does, for example, with this piece, you're given a commission to write the piece. What sort of constraints or what sort of specifications are given to you when you are commissioned to write a piece?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote this piece for the New York Philharmonic and Esa-Pekka Salonen. I really get blanks, I really do get to choose myself what I want to do. And in this case, I was given a chance to use a full orchestra, and it is one of my kind of main passions in music is writing orchestra pieces. So I'm very happy to be able to do that a lot. And I do get I'm very lucky and happy and thankful that I do get I do get to choose myself what to do. And I sometimes, of course, it's requested that the piece is this or that in duration or things like this. In this case, it wasn't, but there are just different ways to commission and different ways to also collaborate and to kind of speak with ensembles and orchestras about what it is that you want to do.
Right. Are you do you ever know in advance what other pieces may be presented in the concert around your work?
Yeah, sometimes I do get asked if I have an opinion about what pieces might be nice to program along with it, but often I really do not have a clue. It's always nice to have a conversation if people want that. Yeah, but I just really like it when people kind of find creative ways to program and find pieces that are maybe very different from one another to put in concert.
Yeah, I suppose that's the art of programming, isn't it? That yeah, to create an experience for the audience. You mentioned there that you really enjoy writing for a symphony orchestra specifically. What are the specific? Is it just the palette of instruments you have available? Or what is it that attracts you to that genre?
Yeah, I think what it really comes down to is that it really resonates with how I conceive music and how I listen internally. And I really, really like to have this palette. It's an endless, there are endless possibilities to work with when you have an orchestra. So many colors, so many textures, and the harmony and everything. It's it's been a passion of mine since I started to write music, actually. So I think it just really resonates with how I hear the music that I make.
Yeah, it's quite a unique vehicle, a symphony orchestra, isn't it? The the commission for this piece was as a result of the Kravis Emerging Composer Fellowship, as you mentioned, at the New York Philharmonic. How long were you attached to that orchestra with over the duration of that fellowship?
It was a fellowship that kind of basically mostly was this commission, and I visited with them a couple of times, which was amazing and great, of course. So it was a couple of years that I was in affiliation with them and got to know them, which was great. And they had played my pieces before as well, one of my pieces before. So it was wonderful to get a chance to get to know them and do this commission for them.
Do you actually get time to sort of collaborate with the individual players that you've written the parts for?
I didn't in this case. It's more about, for myself personally, about getting the sense of the energy of the orchestra, and to kind of sit in on their concerts and getting to know them, as getting to know the organization and the institution.
People would assume that composing is mainly, let's call it, an act of solitude. Is that how you feel about it? And do you feel, therefore, that it requires a certain type of personality who's comfortable on them by themselves for long periods of time?
I'm sure that you're right, right there, because I mean, it definitely takes a lot of alone time. Um, and also, just need so much space to find the music and to work on it, and you need a lot of time. So yes, I mean, I'm sure that not everybody can, be alone with themselves all the time, but it suits many people and composers.
Yeah. Do you sort of look for points of feedback through it? Let's say this Metacosmos, as you're working on the piece, do you look for points of feedback from people as you're developing the piece, or is it you're entirely your baby until it's finished?
Yes, it's nobody really gets to see it until it's finished, but I do have a lot of conversation. It's more like about kind of ideas, and I don't want to say like philosophy of the music, but I do actually have a philosopher for husband, and I talk a lot to him, and we have kind of these talks about ideas and things. But as far as the music itself is concerned, I'm I don't share it until it's ready.
And of course, we'll be sharing it this evening as we're all going to hear the piece. You studied composition at the University of California in San Diego. What was there a specific reason behind studying there?
Yeah, I mean it's a wonderful department. Has a very diverse program with a lot of different faculty and a lot of different students, and it was really something that resonated very well with me. And yeah, it was. There were a few options. I only applied in the U.S. Because me and my husband, we were both going to do our PhDs, and so we wanted to study in America. And yeah, California it was, and it was amazing.
It's a very nice part of the world. The RSNO was on tour there pre-pandemic, and yeah, It's definitely a good place to spend some time. Talking of pandemic, this may be a slightly odd question, but what place do you think the act of composition and commissioning plays in the era of a pandemic?
That's a good question. It's been, of course, it's always been important, to commission composers and artists, and now even more than ever, I think. But that applies to so many of us in all different kinds of genres and fields. And I actually really like how people we have all just found ways in music to share it, even though we've weren't able to have so many concerts. But it does play a very big role in kind of having new music written, having new music performed, and it's really important to keep that alive. Of course, we don't want to miss a few years or decades of new music being written.
Yeah. Have you, with the work that you've composed, over the last couple of years, have you either done any sort of response to coronavirus, or felt the need to do that specifically, or, as you say, is the very act of keeping the arts alive is the primary concern?
Yeah, I think that's the primary concern, but also just as a reflection for myself, because when the pandemic hit, I was writing a huge orchestra piece.
Oh,
And I was writing it as we had lockdowns and cancelled performances and postponed performances. And I have to say, it was surreal for me to be writing that piece. I was too far into the piece so that I couldn't reduce the instrumentation, which I'm actually thankful for, because I might have been tempted to reduce it. But so it was a bit surreal to be writing that, like a big orchestra piece. But I'm very thankful that I did, and I'm writing another one now. But again, it's all about just not stopping, finding motivation to keep going and
yeah,
make more art and music.
absolutely. Here. Do you play an instrument yourself?
Yes, I play the cello.
You play the cello.
I do. I always thought I would become a cellist, and then composition kind of just took over my life. So
Right.
yeah.
Anna, it's been fantastic to have a talk about Metacosmos. As I say, it's a wonderfully intense piece of music with real viscerality about it. We're performing it at the Usher Hall in Edinburgh, and the Glasgow Royal Concert Hall, and of course online. So if you are listening online, I would really recommend that you have your sound settings right, so you can really appreciate the low end of the frequencies on the sound. It's an amazing piece, and have a look towards the back of the orchestra, where the percussion are playing. That they're so integral to the textures of this piece. Anna Thorvaldsdottir, thank you ever so much for your time today, and we hope you enjoy the concert.